Hey mate, how's things?
Mate, how are you? Yeah, good, good.
Good, good. Mate, today what I want to go through is the time that we hit our first 10K month and and what that meant for us in our business, and also help some people to actually get there themselves, right? So
Yeah,
we had gone through a fair bit before hitting that milestone. I definitely think it's a massive milestone. Like, I mean, for me personally, we left our corporate jobs, earning some decent money, and you go out on your own to know stable income and start a business. It's almost like that first moment of like true validation, in the sense of 10K a month, 120K a year. It's like I've replaced my full-time job income, and
yeah,
also people love my product, and you can sort of see the blue sky from there. And so what we're finding with conversations with people is like that's like a real milestone, a real ultimate goal for them, in the first 12 months at least, to be able to get there. And
mm, yeah,
and just looking at our numbers, I mean, it took us almost 18 months to get there. And so if we can impart some wisdom on others, then that would be good to help them get there as quickly as possible. But yeah, I mean, do you remember when we hit our first 10K month? What was it like for you?
yeah. Well, I think we were just looking at some numbers before. Um, I don't specifically remember hitting it, but I remember getting busy, and then I think we kind of just once we hit it, we kind of just sort of blitzed past it and didn't really look back. Um, so, I mean, I think we've discussed on different podcasts before that we had other metrics that we were focused on, specifically around like 2 day or like the unit that we use a 2 day metric, 2 day sale, 2 day cleanse sales. So that's what I was focused on. But the actual 10K as a general ballpark sort of goal for small businesses, I think is a really helpful reference point. So yeah, as I say, I remember getting busy, and then we just kind of stayed busy
Yeah, yeah.
after that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And just touching on what you mentioned about, like, it was we were purely focused on order numbers. I think that was more like the goal for us, and what that translated to financially was kind of almost a byproduct. And that was driven by you, I remember, because we had on our whiteboards, 10 cleanses a week, 20 cleanses a week, 50, 100, and it just
Yeah,
kind of went up like that. And that actually dovetails into a really good point that I've been stressing lately with people and clients and things, is actually knowing your specific numbers. So of course you might have your financial goal, call it 10K, but what does that actually mean? That's a byproduct of everything in between. And so what you need to do is you need to divide that 10K a month by your average order value to get, okay, how many sales do I actually need per month? And what does that mean? Okay, so once you've divided 10,000 by average order value, that'll give you actual sales numbers per month. Divide that by 30 sales per day, right? As soon as you have set in your mind, I need X amount of sales per day, then that becomes like your driving force. Or even week, as we went in segments of weeks. And then from that point of view, you can do everything you need within your control to drive those sales. And that comes down to driving website traffic. So again, once you've got that daily number, you can divide it by your conversion rate on your website, and that gives you visitors per day. So again, you're breaking it down even more, but something more tangible and controllable. And so I remember that was something that we had
yeah,
done, as you say, and put our marketing plan around focusing on getting that number of website visitors and therefore website conversions, which really brings it down into bite-sized chunks, but really actionable items that you can work around. Don't you think?
yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I totally
Um,
agree.
and so that's kind of what we teach people. So I'll flick up our numbers, because people always ask us about, our progress. And this is obviously going back, a few years. But we were a startup at one stage, and it's really cool kind of looking back at these numbers. And these are literally real numbers from Shopify,
Yeah,
our monthly revenue. And you can see our first 10K month, and it happened to be our first 20K month at the same point in time. And then our first 30K month, not long after, which was awesome. But, in our first 12 months, like, we had made, like, or even our first sort of 7, 8 months, we had made 25 grand, in that
yeah,
time, which is crazy to kind of look at. There was a good milestone here. We had done some really good activity here. And then kind of the start of 2015 was when the wheels started really turning. And for us, it seemed like there was some really pivotal things that had kind of been like our activity from 6 months ago was starting to kind of flywheel and accumulate from those point in time. Yeah, I mean, this one's a big jump. There was a couple of things that contributed to that, but like in terms of getting the wheels turning and things, do you recall like what we actually had done that's practical for people to jump on board with and start implementing in their business?
Yeah, well, I think the first, like, just pointing to the screen, I don't know if it makes sense, but up until December 2014, I think we were just keeping everything very internal and just basically almost just testing and iterating the product with family and friends, because we went through a very extreme product iteration phase, just given the nature of the product, and that we were manufacturing everything ourselves, which we've discussed on past discussions, I think, before. So we were making everything ourselves. So we had to learn how to make the product and then how we wanted the cleanse to look, essentially. And so I remember that we spent a lot of time on obviously trying to hit sales numbers, but also trying to make sure that our product was super tight and something that we were happy and comfortable with. And I think around that January, February time in 2015, we started to sort of go outside our family and friends and approach, like, I suppose, influencers and other people that weren't in our direct network. And then that started to sort of spread across into their network of friends and followers and things like that. So I think that's really what started to happen around that time. And this was early stages of Instagram too. I mean, I think that Instagram started in 2012 or 2013 or something like that. So we were just learning about Instagram and Facebook at that time as well. But that's what happened around January, February, March. We started talking to influencers, I guess, which was a new term. How long ago was that now? Like 9 years ago. Yeah, so that's what started happening. And then as more influencers sort of were posting about it, then people that were following them that were influencers would contact us, or we would contact them, and we just sort of started this kind of I don't know what you'd call it, like Instagram activity, I guess. And that's just what happened in 2015.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you know, we kind of coined this a bit of a flywheel, as we say, where the momentum builds on the momentum. And as well as that kind of influencer activity, we obviously had, you know, serving impressions to our market was our priority to get that website traffic, to get those sales. And so by penetrating different markets where we suddenly weren't going out to our family and friends, hey, this is our business, as you say, which is pretty proof in the pudding here with that consistency. Whereas versus the following year, it's steady growth and then bang, obviously, and then a bit of, you know, more growth, which is great, but a bit more consistency along that line. But it's every time you see a massive growth spurt like this, for example, I mean, small numbers, but a massive growth spurt, big growth spurt. This is seasonal for us because it's, you know, Christmas time. That's just a historically quiet time for us, as you can see down here. But it's whenever you break into a new market or new audience, that's when we find the biggest breakthroughs are. And so whether that is influencers, whether that is PR activity, whether that is collaborations with people who have a different audience to your current audience, that's when you see the massive spikes. And I think that that's where people kind of get a bit insular with their own brand, thinking, okay, if I just do my organic content on my Instagram page, people will come to me. But it's just not like that at all. One thing, the algorithm is really unfavorable to organic content at the moment. It reaches like 3 to 5% of your actual followers, let alone anybody beyond those networks. And so that's a real challenge for people to understand. They feel like because they're in their business day to day that they're everywhere or hassling people. It's like literally you're nowhere. Like until you're penetrating a different market or a different audience, you don't have any exposure, literally. And that was probably something that we kind of understood inadvertently that contributed to our growth so massively, that we were forever venturing to find new markets and new audiences once we had got that proof, as you said, in that first, 12 months. And so that's probably what's been prolific. And so, sure, Instagram was new back then, but Instagram is still very, very effective. but there's also different ways and different methods and different platforms depending on where your audience actually is. Like I read something the other day that the biggest influence that somebody has over their audience is actually on YouTube, number one, podcast, number two, and then Instagram, Facebook is kind of 3 and 4 in there. And so that's something to think about. If that's where your audience is, you go to where the influence actually is. So I think that people think a bit narrow-minded at this point. At least the people that we speak to, as I say, they kind of are a bit insular. They're not kind of prepared to do the legwork to put themselves out there, I think, which is something that we're naively not afraid of, in a sense.
No, I think like the way that we learned that Instagram was super effective, Instagram and Facebook at the time, I think Facebook is less effective now for people posting, but it was essentially that we had a very new product as well. Like we couldn't go to traditional marketing platforms like TV or radio or newspaper because one, that they were too inhibitive, and three, they just blasted a whole heap of people that we weren't targeting, which was very forward thinking people that were health focused. So we had, the only avenue we actually had was Instagram and Facebook. So it was by necessity, but it's over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, since 2015, it's got even more necessary to use Instagram and Facebook because, big media is, not helpful to small businesses that are very highly focused on niche products. So that's why it's really super important to focus on it. And I think also, like, the devil's in the detail, as we always say. And we had a couple of good influencers posting, but the reason why that we got influencers posting was that we were super active in actually engaging, like, in a personal, not personal way as in our own personal Instagram accounts, but the brand was very interactive with its audience and very vocal, talking and interacting with other people. And I think perhaps some people think it's a bit, I don't know, they just try and do it a bit lazy nowadays, where it's like, oh, well, if I just send a message and even say I'll pay you $500, I'll post for it and, tick that box and move on. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that, because you have to build a rapport with these people. You have to make sure that they trust the brand, that they like the brand, that they want to represent the brand. Like, it's an exchange of, it's an exchange of energy. It's an exchange of attention. So if you're just treating it like a transaction, then they're probably going to treat it like a transaction. And that works sometimes, but not if you've got no cash to spend. So using Instagram, like, I remember we would spend hours on Instagram, like before social media addiction was a thing. And just like liking people, following hashtags, following a whole host of different things, which I'm not too sure how many people do that anymore, as opposed to just having stuff come into them and having stuff coming at them. So when you're on your business account, and I think we may have mentioned this before too, like, it is important to keep the personal and business account separate, but on the business account, you have to be sort of going out into social and being social, as opposed to just having stuff come into you. At some point, you'll have influencers come to you and ask for stuff, but probably not for the first part anyway. Liking, commenting, interacting, actually, like, being genuine, being authentic. Like, you don't have to do anything that's untoward or whatever. It's just make sure people know what your product's about and what the business is about, really. And that does take a lot of work, because it is literally like comment, like. You can get bots to do stuff like that, but they have their own problems. And I think if you try and take shortcuts, especially if you're just trying to get to 10K, if you're trying to take shortcuts, you'll pay for them down the track, or you won't get results at all. And I think that's probably our main message to people starting up their own businesses in their infancy, is keep super focused on what you're about and who you're targeting, but don't get lost in trying to always hack the system. like trying to find the next best whatever, like the next most effective TikTok video, whatever that, it's a waste of time. Just focus purely on interacting with real people on, Instagram is what we're talking about at the minute, and Facebook, but whatever's effective. I mean, I don't know, there was a phase where Snapchat was a thing. I don't know if anyone uses that anymore. But that's another example of like, oh, maybe we should do Snapchat, and oh, maybe we should do this, and oh, whatever. And it's
particularly
just like,
the ad gurus, the ad
yeah,
gurus straight into it,
I don't know whatever else there is now these days, but yeah, I think it's just important to stay focused on like the simple tasks which are effective, but they're also inherently kind of boring and labor intensive. But that's why they work, because not everyone. Yeah, you get to a certain scale, like probably where we're at now, and a lot of other businesses where you don't want to be sitting on Instagram doing this stuff, so you just don't. But that means that smaller companies who are hungry to get a sale, they're out there hustling, liking, commenting, building relationships. That's what you need to be doing. Because if you're not doing it, like you said before, you're irrelevant.
And to be honest, like, we are still doing that, and we're at the size we're at now, the experience we've got now, and is that a coincidence that we've grown so much, since we started doing that and continue to do that. So anyone who thinks this is like a short-term play or just as you say, like a way to shortcut things, it's the opposite. It's actually for your longevity. It's something you continue to do. It's like any smart person does more of what works and less of what doesn't. And this is one thing that you can get into. And in fact, sure, you mentioned, how Instagram was 6 or 7 years ago, but the diversity of what's available in Instagram and Facebook, there is literally a page, a community, an influencer for every single little thing. The more niche, like the better. You're going to find people there. And this is, again, another thing. I was just chatting to somebody in the sustainability space, and like, I just can't find my audience. I'm like, we thought that too. But I promise you, there are people out there who don't want sugar in their fruit juice. They know the harmful impacts of drinking 5 liters of juice over 2 days, and it has a hell of a lot of fructose in it. That was us. And we were like, oh, maybe there's a few more people out there. Here we are, 300 to 400K a month, 8 years later. That is our community and our tribe that understands that. And so that is the same detail and niche that you can get to in your business. You just have to understand it. And I think you're right before when you said that you just have to lead with what your point of difference is and pursue that. Don't try and blend in. The last thing that people want to do is for you to blend in and be another brand. And when you find somebody who is on your level and believes in what you are and what you do, they run with it. And they start to promote you in like, there's no other brand out there like this, like a few of our influencers did. And when we found them, they became unofficial ambassadors for us, and we followed them all the way through. And so you can strike gold. And that's where, ironically, by niching and finding the minorities, you have way better potential of exploding versus I'm going to conform to what people actually want. And because that's what they accept and what is normal. And that's a sure path to failure, because you're competing against everybody else and a lot of businesses that have billion-dollar, budgets and things. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, and a lot of those influencers from the early days are actually like friends now, which is, kind of a really cool part of it. Like although you're kind of doing it to generate sales, because it was done in such a genuine way, we are actually friends with them legitimately. And it gets a bit corny because you don't want to, but it is one of the most rewarding parts of it, that you actually meet new people who are influencers and love your product, and then they're actually become personal friends. And there's like a lot of them now. But that's also a testament to the product. And we spoke about this before, like you have to have a product that, one, you're personally passionate about, 2, obviously you believe in it, and then 3, which other people corroborate with that. Like if you're the only one that thinks it's the best thing in the world, well, that's not a bad thing, but you do need to sort of make sure that other people find it unique and interesting as well. Because then they won't talk about it, because at the end of the day, the content creators, I think, like we discussed, want to create content and they need things to talk about. And so if you have a product which you can talk about or they can talk about, then it's an easy conversation to have with an influencer, because they win because they can have content and you win because they're talking about your product. So, but that's not to say that you just create your product for that. It's how you position your product and how, as you say, if the more niche you are and more focused you are on what makes your product different or why your product is blah, 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 it's actually easier to then attract influencers and talk to them about, oh, it's Australian made, oh, it's organic, oh, it's sustainable, oh, blah, 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 low fructose. I mean, the main thing that got us that cut through the noise of just social media generally was the fact that we were low fructose and still are now. But back in the day, people were like, what the hell is fructose? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then we just kind of, and it was like an education piece. It was an opportunity. Whereas it was also a really hard part of the business because it wasn't traditionally sweet. So you kind of, and we've been through this before about having people who love and hate the product, but not to get too lost in the weeds, but having a product that you have refined to the point which you're super happy with, super passionate about, and then off you go. You just start approaching people. That's
what they will resonate with. Like, that's what I say. Like, if you go to somebody with a clothing brand and they're like, well, why would I interact with you? It's like, because of this. And they're like, all right, I can get on board with that. And they feel special because they've got their own personal brand to uphold. And so they're like, I've got this awesome product. This is why it's so great. This is why it's different, versus something that's like everybody else. Like, they're not attracted to that. Right. So true. Just to back up what you're saying there for sure.
And it also comes back to what we're saying about being like genuine and authentic. I mean, in your approach with people and how you approach your marketing, but also the product itself, you don't want to just be sort of lying about the product, or, like, that's the whole point of this, is that they will represent you if you're genuine. But if anyone thinks that you're scamming, well, why the hell would they talk about it? If anything, they'll talk about it in a bad way. And that's not the reason to do things. So, I mean, I'm just assuming that the people we're talking to and the people that we're trying to help have products that they're proud of, that they've refined and iterated, and now they're just trying to launch into 10K a month. I mean, let's just assume that those fundamentals are ticked, and they're not trying to sell, like, I don't know, matches or some shit as antiques or something. I don't know. But I don't know what else there is to really touch on, man. I think it's just like, perhaps maybe what you and I thought was just common sense is kind of get lost in these days, because, as you said, like, Instagram still fundamentally works the same way, except it's more skewed towards the way that we used it early days, because it doesn't care about organically created content from businesses at all, unless you're paying thousands of dollars to get it in front of people. So it's even more important to get other people to post about your stuff, notwithstanding that the best way to sell something is to have someone else tell someone about your product. So it works on many levels, and not to be afraid of doing the grunt work of just sitting there, liking, commenting, and interacting with people.
Yeah, and that is something that people shy away from, and something that we see that, is a mistake that people make. They don't get the instant gratification, and so they just stop, even though we're saying, what's worked for us and we've got to the level is the fundamental, So so
I think
Sorry,
man. I was just going to sum it up a bit, I guess, because we started off the conversation saying, like, 10 grand, break it into sales, and let's assume they're $100 products. So what's that? I don't know. Was that 1,000 sales or something?
100.
Okay, 100. Okay, easy, 100. So I think where people get lost a bit sometimes is, like, if I'm not targeting 100 people all at once and not getting, like, they don't break it down into bite-sized things, that every single time you like something or comment on something is one person. And that if you break it down into weeks like we did, what's that, 25 a week, that's just like one person out of 25 Just keep it really bite-sized, and every person you interact with, like, don't assume that they're going to buy it, but they're important. Don't just be like, oh, I have to target 1 million people and just get like 1% of 1 million. It's like, yeah, in theory that's good, but in practice that's total garbage, because you're not focused on the one person that you're talking to right now, which is like an actual person buying your product. And that's where I think some people get lost in this day and age. Like I was saying, oh, can I get a bot to do that? Can I get a person in like wherever, like Ukraine, to do that? Can I just outsource this? Can someone write the copy for me? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, do it yourself, like to a point, and ensure that the person that you're interacting with, like face to face in retail or digital, like on the digital platforms, that they've got your attention, and you're actually engaging with them, because they sense that. So you'll sell them if you engage with them. But if you're just ticking numbers and trying to be like, oh, I'm just liking everyone's fucking photos and whatever, like, people sense that stuff too. So it's important just to not get lost in the weeds of it. And as we've said before, just take it one step at a time, and every person you interact with is important. Not to be like, yeah, you have to touch 10,000 people every night or whatever. Sounded a bit weird, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's important. It's important. I think people, I'm assuming, but I think perhaps a reason why people don't do it is because it feels like, oh, like I'm not getting anywhere, or I'm not reaching enough of my audience. I don't like enough excuses. But the reality is that you're actually engaging with people that are interested in your product, as opposed to blasting out something to 10,000 people, of which, like you said, if you post it organically, essentially no one's going to see it and no one's going to purchase. So yeah, I think it's just sort of doing that, and just appreciating that it is positively benefiting your business, even though it seems like a hard slog.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it's easy to look back on it now, but that was probably one of our strengths way back when, and still now, is to play that long game. And that's, what it takes for people who aren't, as I say, big companies and spending heaps of money, but to get to your first 10K, that's there's some important things in there. So, but I think that's some good stuff there. Hopefully people can, take some value from that and help some focus. Obviously, reach out to us if you need a hand with anything or have any other further questions. But hopefully that gives some focus. And as I say, real life case study of us, sharing some information there. So thanks for that, mate.
Yeah.
And,
No, all good, man.
Easy.
Yeah, no.
All right, mate. Catch you later. Ciao.
See you, mate.